Impetus, episode 110. This episode starts off with a promo package. Highlights of Gary Federline's speech from last week is shown. As it seemed like Gary would be taking a temporary leave to nurse his injuries, he thanked his family, the fans, Riki Mathews, and even the commentator CJ for their support. With CJ and Riki entering the ring to wish him the best, Gary dropped our hero in the middle of the ring. With CJ helping, Gary hit Riki with the Fed cred on an elevated ladder, causing much harm to Riki's ribs. Riki's night was far from done though, as he refused to let his injuries stop him from competing in the #1 contendership match to the World Impetus Championship. As Riki competed with busted ribs, Johnny Fabuloso and Terry DeLita took advantage of the injury, causing the Fabulous One to become the next challenger to the World Impetus Championship. With Greg Williams entering, he stared down his next opponent, raising his title, ready for his next contest. The intro of Impetus is seen, along with an advertisement for tonight's events. Tonight, Greg Williams takes on Dylan Dark. Also, a #1 contendership match, a 2 out of 3 falls match featuring Akira and Jacinta will take place. However, which champion will the victor face? As in the main event tonight, the women's title is on the line in a triple threat tables match. Daria defends her title against Jade Williams and Cortni in this hardcore affair. Before the night's action begins, we see Aaron Cutler alone at the commentary desk, as it seems as though his colleague CJ is attending to his own business issues. After the result of last week, Aaron hopes CJ's absence from the announce desk will be less damaging tonight. Enter Steven Dreadful. Steven takes a while to enter, only to be followed by CJ. Standing on the stage together, CJ hands Steven the same balaclava mask he gave Gary last week. Wearing the mask, Steven enters with a new identity and Aaron furious with his colleague. Enter the Switchblades. The new tag team on the block enter. With Kai by his partner's side, Leo is ready for action. Match 1, Steven Dreadful with CJ versus Leo with Kai. Leo gets a surprising burst of momentum after taking a cocky beating from Steven. As the Switchblade heads up for a high-flying move, Steven swipes Leo's legs from underneath him, sending him groin first into the turnbuckle and smacking hard on the mat. Steven covers quickly for a cheap and dirty win. Winner, Steven Dreadful. Steven gets his hand raised after the match by an arrogant CJ. Meanwhile, they see Leo get nursed by Kai. Adding injury to injury, Steven and CJ attack the Switchblades. The rookie team tries to fight back, only for Gary Federline to enter. With an entrance that would normally be to save our heroes, Gary Federline storms to the ring and helps the villains beat the upstart rookies down. With the Switchblades grounded, CJ is grinning as Gary and Steven stare at one another, understanding their new unity. Gary hits the Fed cred with Steven hitting his arrival. The two stand after hitting their finishes with CJ and place the familiar masks on their faces. The two have become 3 as the KOTR continue. With Aaron noting his anger with the previous scene, a backstage interview in the parking lot is then seen with Chris Vortex. We witness Chris walk through the parking lot in huge cockiness. Strutting with arrogance, Chris is approached by an interviewer who asks if his confidence has anything to do with his apparent hand-picked, amazing tag team partner scheduled for later this evening. Chris chuckles and claims that he has been looked down upon for quite some time. He's been told that he has been the weak link of the quota, been viewed as a tag team failure and labelled as a pathetic vegan loser who can taste the cabbage but not a win. Tonight, that all changes. Tonight, Chris has a huge ally waiting for him and can't wait to form a far better partnership than Steven Dreadful ever could. Chris walks on with a swagger. We then see Aaron Cutler back in his commentary desk by himself, as he discusses how Chris clearly didn't see what just happened with Stephen Dreadful. It looks as though Dreadful is forming one hell of a union with not only his broadcast partner CJ, but with Gary Federline. The show then transitions to a replay from episode 102. Scenes from the all-women's battle royal is shown, where Akira was raked in the eyes and eliminated by Jacinta. We then see a backstage interview in the interview area with Akira herself. Seen with a darker shade of lipstick, Akira is welcomed and told that a lot has happened since episode 102. Akira has made quite a stir in the locker room and in the wrestling community as a whole with her fight against cosmetics and aesthetics in the women's division. Akira is asked if she would have ever had a platform to speak her mind if not for her elimination in the Battle Royal from episode 102. Akira has had her thoughts progress throughout the last year or so. It would only be a matter of time before her words were spoken. Her huge opportunities, both in the Battle Royal and last week facing the champion, were ruined thanks to Jacinta. Tonight, she will do to Jacinta what Jacinta has done to her. And then some. By beating Jacinta twice tonight, Akira will prove that playing the game, looking powerful and looking good may get you far, but it isn't enough to defeat natural talent. Up next, the 2 out of 3 Falls #1 Contenders match takes place as Akira takes on Jacinta. The show then heads into a commercial break. Enter Akira. As the upstart enters, advertisements for tonight's main event is shown. The women's title is on the line in a triple threat tables match. Daria defends her title against Jade Williams and Cortni. But first, a future challenger must be determined as enter Jacinta. Irritated with her placement in the locker room, Jacinta needs to defeat Akira twice tonight to get her spot back. Match 2, #1 Contenders match, 2 out of 3 Falls. Akira versus Jacinta. With Jacinta in control, she throws Akira over the top rope, mocking her opponent with a poetic callback to the Battle Royal. Beating Akira down on the outside, Jacinta brings her back into the ring to hit the tsunami for the first fall. Jacinta 1, Akira 0. With Akira eventually fighting back, she gets cut off by Akira pulling her hair, slamming her to the mat. With Jacinta setting up for her second tsunami, Akira dodges and rakes Jacinta in the eyes, performing a little poetry of her own, calling back to the Battle Royal. In pain, Jacinta blindly attempts a roundhouse kick but is countered into a quick pin by Akira, tying the score. Jacinta 1, Akira 1. Akira tries to remain in control, only for Jacinta to finally hit the roundhouse kick, staggering Akira. After healing her eye, Jacinta attempts to clothesline her opponent, only to be reversed and hit with the new finisher, Empty Promises, by Akira, securing her the win. Jacinta 1, Akira 2. The winner, Akira. As Akira exits with her victory and #1 contendership locked in place, we see a backstage segment in the locker room featuring Jillian Day and the Essentials. Josh and Freddie are warming up for their soon-to-come tag team match tonight, only to be interrupted by a flirtatious Jillian Day. The Essentials listen to the wannabe manager as she speaks about last week. She understands the real reason why they didn't want her as their manager last week. It's because they're intimidated by her power, her authority, her dominating qualities. She tells them not to worry, claiming that she won't give up on them that easily. Josh makes it super clear that the real reason they don't want her as their manager is because she ain't worth the headache, yo. Freddie tells Jillian that her management qualities are like running on a treadmill. She does a lot, but she gets absolutely nowhere. Jillian isn't insulted. Instead, she shrugs her shoulders with acceptance. A good manager would be able to find out who the Essentials are facing tonight. A good manager would be able to tell them what huge partner Chris Vortex apparently has in store for them, and a good manager would help them win. The Essentials are now interested, asking Jillian who the partner is. Jillian then throws her hands up in the air with sarcasm. No. It doesn't work like that, she says. The Essentials have made it quite clear that she isn't needed, but after their loss tonight, she will be. Jillian flicks her hair as she leaves, making the Essentials worried. The show then transitions to a replay from last week. With Charlie Finch questioning Skar's strength, he suggests that the monster has gotten weaker ever since he placed Susan, his sister's soul, into Rochelle's body. Believing him to have gotten complacent, Finch challenges Skar to reverse the ritual in order to put things back to normal, to give Skar a true reason to fight once again. Finch leaves the scene with Skar actually contemplating the idea. Tonight, Charlie Finch wants his answer. Will he get what he wants? However, up next, Finch is in action as he takes on Barry the Bogan. That is all to come after the commercial break. Returning to action, Barry the Bogan enters, followed by Charlie Finch. Match 3. Charlie Finch versus Barry the Bogan. Winner, Charlie Finch. Awaiting Skar's answer for later tonight, Finch is stopped after his victory with the red lighting of the monster. Enter Skar. Expecting the confrontation later this evening, Finch is surprised to see Skar interrupt. Before Skar answers Finch's question, Skar has a question he'd like to ask himself. Skar asks why Finch would want him to reverse the ritual. For Skar's benefit or for his own? What would happen if Skar followed Finch's directions? Reversing the ritual would not only place Susan's soul back in her own rotting body at the bottom of a river, but return Rochelle's soul back to the live one. And after all, isn't that what Finch wants from all of this? Isn't that what he wants? To be reunited with his own long-lost loved one? To have his soul be able to lock on with his one and only soulmate? Isn't that the reason why Finch wants all of this to happen? With Finch's lip quivering and eyes filled to the brim with tears, the immune soldier reveals the truth and says, "No, not at all." Finch claims that this has nothing to do with his previous love for Rochelle. In fact, if the ritual were to take place again, the first thing he'd do is drop that bitch like he did at Relentless. Finch tells Skar that he needs to do this for his own sake, as his human emotions are starting to show. Finch then pulls out a similar looking book, the same book that holds the passage for the used ritual. Finch claims that he found it and is one passage away from delivering Skar's power back to him. With the passage being written in foreign text, he needs Skar to read it, again, for himself. Skar takes the book slowly and thinks. With Finch placing his hand on Skar's shoulder, he tells him that his weakness will be cured soon. Then, Skar chucks the book down and clutches the throat of Finch. Skar asks him if he really thinks he'll give up his family, throw away a sister that he fought 15 years for. Choking him against the turnbuckle, Skar sniggers and claims that dropping him right now would be satisfying, but that would be selfish. Enter Susan. The sinister sister enters licking her lips, ready to destroy Finch herself. Prepared to hit her revival kick, out comes immunity to attack. Stunning the siblings, Finch escapes with his unit, book in hand, and continues his lecture. Furious with Skar not accepting his weakness, he demands that immunity beat it out of him. Next week, Finch demands a match with the chaotic creature, where if he wins, the ritual will take place. The Chris Vortex story continues as we transition to a backstage locker room segment featuring the vegan himself. Chris is seen pacing back and forth in stress, hoping for his phone call to be answered. Irritated that no one is picking up, a member of staff walks in to let him know that his match is up next. With Chris stressed, he yells, fully aware that his match is up next, but his damn partner isn't answering his call. Finally, in the nick of time, Vortex finally has his call answered. He answers with glee and relief, asking where the big man is, only to be horrified with the response. On loudspeaker, a deep voice is heard yelling, telling Vortex to stop calling him and get it through his thick potato head that they will never, ever be a tag team. Hoping to get a word in, Chris is denied with the voice demanding that he get that free sample of broccoli off of his doorstep as soon as possible. If Vortex ever bothers him again, he's going to make sure he turns his herbivore bitch ass into minced meat. With the staff member gone, Vortex is alone without a partner. He asks what the hell he's going to do now. Desperate for a partner, he grabs the closest person to him, the cameraman. With the camera showing a POV shot, the cameraman is rushed through the hallway by a panicked Chris. Aaron Cutler is then seen at his commentary desk again, only this time in a little bit of shock. Aaron is bewildered by what we're about to see. It seems as though Chris Vortex is about to do battle against the Essentials with a cameraman. Enter the Essentials with Jillian Day. Josh and Freddie are prepared for this huge partner of Vortex's, clearly unaware of the scene that has just played out. With the Essentials worried and begging a cocky and silent Jillian for advice, Jillian sits at ringside with a smile, while Josh and Freddie are worried about this big partner. Enter Chris Vortex and a cameraman? Forced down the ramp, the cameraman is pushed by a desperate Chris Vortex. Meanwhile, the Essentials look at the shocked Jillian Day, wondering what sort of giant opponent she was expecting. Match 4. The Essentials versus Chris Vortex and a cameraman. With the cameraman shocked to be in this position, Vortex allows his partner to stand on the apron the entire match, filling the role of a tag team competitor. The cameraman stands on the apron the entire match, happy to record the beginning exchange between Vortex and Alba. With Chris failing, he decides to tag in his teammate. The cameraman has no idea what to do. With Chris deciding to hold the camera for him, the cameraman debates with his ally until he walks into the answer finisher from the Essentials. Winners, the Essentials. Jillian is furious what has just happened. Vortex is almost crying at ringside for his pathetic loss, and the Essentials are happy to rid themselves once again of Jillian's quote-unquote help. Still to come, the main event Women's Championship Triple Threat Tables match is set to take place. Daria defends her title against Jade Williams and Cortni. Also, we have an exclusive CJ interview. CJ explains his unity with Gary Federline and Steven Dreadful. However, up next, Greg Williams takes on Dylan Dark. Speaking of Greg Williams, the show then transitions to a backstage locker room segment featuring the Rebel himself and Johnny Fabuloso. Greg finishes his warm-up and is about to head out his room only to hear a loud crash on the other side of it. Looking back to see what it was, nothing is seen. He then turns back around and frightened by the visual of Johnny Fabuloso. Asked what he wants, Johnny asks Greg to tan his back. With Greg declining, Johnny sarcastically wonders what kind of hero Greg is. It wasn't too long ago when Johnny looked up to him, aspired to be with him. As a partner, of course. Thank God he has Terry DeLita as a friend and not someone selfish like Greg. Greg cares little for the insults and only cares about being called the World Impetus Champion. And he plans on proving exactly why he is the champion by going out there right now and whooping Dylan Dark's ass. Seeing as Greg is leaving his own locker room, Johnny can do the same and get the hell out. Johnny scoffs and claims that he won't be called the champion for much longer, as the world is calling for a fabulous champion. Johnny exits, with Greg shaking his head in irritation. Up next, Greg takes on Dylan Dark. Returning to the episode, Dylan Dark enters without his children, ready for battle. Enter Greg Williams. Refusing to be affected by Johnny's recent distractions, Greg storms to the ring per usual. Match 5, Greg Williams versus Dylan Dark. After an equal battle, Dylan gets the upper hand and charges for a spear. However, Greg dodges, allowing the official to take the spear instead. With the referee knocked down, the fight continues, leading to a scrutiny, sending the villain to the outside. The rebel grabs his opponent and chucks him back in the ring, only to be haunted by the appearing Jarvis Banks and Mark Emile, who slither out from under the apron. Crouched on either side of a confused Greg, the children rise, threatening the champion. Realizing his predicament, Greg throws the first shot, taking out the children at ringside. Witnessing Greg climb back in the ring, Dylan hopes to capitalize with a spear, only to cop a big fat scrutiny to the face, allowing the pained official to count to 3. Winner, Greg Williams. After the match, Jarvis and Mark instantly beat down the rebel after their leader's loss. The rookies pound on Greg for a while, leading to their wheelbarrow suplex neckbreaker combination to be hit. However, Greg reverses, fighting back and knocking Jarvis and Mark out of the ring, only to be delivered that fateful spear by Dylan. The Emperor looks down at the champion and picks him up, ready to hit the condemnation, only to be stopped by Jimmy Sparrow. Jimmy Sparrow charges to the ring, equipped with 2 kendo sticks. Charging to the ring, he dodges Dylan's strike attempt and hits the returning Jarvis and Mark in the stomach with both his weapons. Jimmy swings his weapon at Dylan Dark, but the Emperor bails the ring, refraining from the beating. With Dylan retreating from Jimmy's dual-wielding attack, the condemnation regroup up the ramp. Dylan holds his children close to him. The scene seems unfinished, as the condemnation now have the numbers advantage. They approach the ring yet again slowly, only for Jimmy to hand the recovering Greg Williams his second kendo stick. The rebel and the rookie stand tall in the ring as Dylan gathers his children, saving them for a better day. Promised an interview with the commentator CJ, we get it in a parking lot. Throwing his bags in the luxurious car near him, CJ is approached and is asked for his actions with Gary and Steven over the last week. CJ scoffs at the desperation that these quote-unquote backstage journalists have, baited into anything that someone says. CJ won't discuss his partnership with Gary and Steven right now, as they have performed their night's work of entertainment. Next week is when he will reveal everything there is to know about his new faction. Gary and Steven then appear behind CJ, throwing their belongings into the car. Entering the vehicle, the new unit exit the arena. Moments after his recent saving, Greg Williams and Jimmy Sparrow are seen in a backstage hallway. Sweating and in pain due to his recent match, Greg is making his way through backstage until he hears the voice of Jimmy Sparrow from the distance. Jimmy catches up to the champion, asking what a cool moment that was, all for the rebel to interrupt. Greg tells Jimmy that he just doesn't get it, does he? Jimmy is never going to be at the top and truly happy in this business if he keeps on falling for tricks like Dylan Dark just pulled. Not understanding, Jimmy is told that throwing a couple of kendo sticks around doesn't make Jimmy a world champion. No, being a ruthless, cold-blooded, take-no-crap human being makes one a world champion. That is why Greg stands with the gold while Jimmy stands without a clue. Greg walks off with irritation while Jimmy is in sadness. Our friendly face of Aaron Cutler is seen on our screens yet again at the commentary desk. He calms things down as he discusses Warren Jackson's current reign as the Coast to Coast champion. The commentator had an interesting chat with the all-action Jaxon earlier in the week where he spoke to a certain individual about his future plans. The episode then cuts to footage from earlier this week in a backstage interview in a studio. Warren is sitting in his street gear with the Coast to Coast Championship on his lap. Across from him sits Aaron Cutler, who welcomes all to this exclusive interview with the Coast to Coast champion, Warren Jaxon. With the two acquainted, Aaron asks Warren how he feels finalizing his feud with the last of his extraordinary allies, Empire, securing his title in the process. Warren discusses his love for the Coast to Coast Championship. It means the world to him. Before securing it for the second time, he always looked back at his first title reign as something he probably took advantage of. In fact, he can barely remember his first title reign as he was, without realizing it, trying to find out who the hell he was. He went through so many different emotions and personalities, all because he felt pressure by his mentor and his peers. Clutching the title away from Dave Falcon at episode 100 was not only an awesome achievement, but a spreading of the wings for Jaxon himself. Defeating Empire 2 weeks ago was the icing on the cake, as now he can finally let go of his extraordinary past and continue his journey to becoming the longest reigning champion in company history. Aaron talks about that very goal, reminding Warren that he must endure another 294 days, count them, 294 days as champion in order to claim such an accolade. Aaron begins to ask what he thinks the next 10 months will look like, only for the interview to be surprisingly stopped by, "Who it is and what it be, it's your boy, Wazzy D." Wazzy shoos Aaron off of his chair and turns the seat around, facing the champion. Wazzy compliments Warren for his title reign thus far and appreciates his change of character since cutting off Dave Falcon and Empire. Warren's mindset of the Coast to Coast Championship may have changed, but Wazzy's has stayed the same. He still believes that the gold belongs to him, was named after him. And now that Warren has no Empire to protect him, no mentor to guide him, Wazzy can't wait to see the difference between Warren back then and the Warren that stands before him now. Warren leans forward and tells Wazzy that, first of all, he's sitting down. And while they're appreciating each other, he appreciates how Wazzy has used his own promo time to get some much needed attention. Warren reminds Wazzy that the last time he competed for the title, he became the challenger. Just like that. Wazzy wants to know how much Warren has changed. Well, he's not going to simply allow the same thing to happen. Despite how much he hates them, Empire at least earned their title shot by winning a match. He can't say that Wazzy will be able to do the same thing due to his, well, disappointing win-loss record. The two stand up together, slowly staring at one another. Warren hopes to defend his title in the future against someone with a little more walk and a little less talk. The two remain glaring at one another as the scene ends. Up next, the Women's Championship Triple Threat Tables match takes place. Daria defends her title against Jade Williams and Cortni. That is up next. With our last commercial break done for the evening, we then get an advertisement for next week's episode. The number one contendership for the Coast to Coast Championship will take place with a 10-man battle royal. With Wazzy D involved, will he start some well-needed momentum? Also, Charlie Finch versus Skar. If Charlie wins, then the ritual must take place. And just announced, Akira will take on Angel. Will Akira continue her impressive wins before facing the women's champion? The question is, who will be the champion next week? Let's find out right now in the Triple Threat Tables match. Before our huge Triple Threat main event match begins, we need a little bit of a recap. A replay of episode 102 is shown, with Daria getting put through a table by Angel and Cortni. Then a replay of episode 104, the 2-year anniversary spectacular, is shown. Daria hits the Harlem Hangover on Cortni through a table in a hardcore match, only to then be powerbombed through another by the appearing Jade Williams. A final replay is seen of episode 108, a scene from Impulse 3 from 2 weeks ago. After getting a quick roll-up pin on Jade, Daria got powerbombed through the announce table by her seething, losing opponent. Enter Jade Williams. As Jade enters, she walks past the already set up tables on stage. Staring them down, Jade prepares herself for what is to come. Enter Cortni. Pushing a trolley full of weapons to the arena, Cortni can't wait to obtain the gold in extreme fashion. Leaving the trolley on the outside, Cortni arms herself with a trash can in hopes to keep Jade away. Enter Daria. The champion performs her usual flashy entrance. She gets halfway down the ramp only to see the impatient Cortni exit the ring and charge at her with the trash can. However, Daria grabs a weapon from the trolley and blocks the attack, hitting Cortni with it to start the contest. Main event, Match 6, Women's Championship Triple Threat Tables Match. Daria, the champion, versus Jade Williams versus Cortni. As the extreme match takes place, all three competitors share some intense moments, using weapons to their advantage. With Cortni placed ever so nicely to the side, Daria and Jade battle up the ramp and brawl on stage. Hoping to send one another through the already placed wood, they struggle to crash each other through the tables. Jade and Daria are interrupted by Cortni and her trolley full of goodies. Cortni smashes the trolley into each opponent, proceeding to use the weapons inside of it on Daria on stage. Jade hopes to stop Cortni's offense, only to be chased down the ramp by the hardcore enthusiast, smacked a dozen times with a trash can lid, and finally knocked out with a blow to the head. Cortni is on fire as she walks back toward the champion, who is recovering on stage. With her time to recuperate, Daria strikes Cortni again and again, chucking her into the previously used trolley. Literally in it, like inside of it. With Cortni standing in the trolley, hoping to fight her way out of it, she is denied as Daria pushes the trolley down the ramp. Cortni collides into Jade at the bottom of it, knocking both challengers loopy. Daria grabs one of the tables assigned on stage and charges after the recovering opponents at the bottom of the ramp, knocking them down yet again. Daria then sets the table up on the outside of the ring, hoping to send Cortni through the wood, only for Jade to pull her out of the way. This is where Jade then takes over offense. Later in the match, Jade has brought the table into the middle of the ring, setting up Cortni for a powerbomb, hoping to climax her recent domination. With Cortni thrown up high, Daria comes off the top rope and hits a diving clothesline on Cortni, sending the immunity female through the wood. After witnessing the scene, the official calls for the bell, eventually announcing the winner as Daria. Winner, Daria. Jade stares at the champion in shock, insulted that Daria has just stolen a win from her yet again. The champion takes little time to exit the ring and grabs her retained title instantly. Looking back at the seething Jade, Daria grins as she has outsmarted the giant once again.